Hey everyone, Elizabeth here. The Last Laugh delivers stories that leave you speechless. If you're here for it, hit subscribe and let's go.
The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, tucked inside an envelope my mother had addressed in her best handwriting, the kind she reserved for things that mattered. Dad's retirement celebration. Riverside Room, the Hargrove Hotel. Saturday 7 p.m. Formal attire. Beneath it, in her smaller, tighter script, "We expect you there, Nora. No excuses this time." I set it on my kitchen counter and stood there for a long moment, one hand braced against the edge of the sink. Through the window, the October light was doing something beautiful over the parking lot of my apartment complex, turning the ordinary cars gold for about 4 minutes before the clouds swallowed it again. I watched those 4 minutes. Then I called my doctor. "Dr. Reed," I said when he picked up. "My father's retirement party is Saturday. My sister will be there. My mother will be there. Pause. Do you want to go?" I thought about it. "I think I need to." "Then I'll drive you," he said. "Margaret and I were invited anyway. I'll be right there." That's the thing about Dr. Reed that no one in my family ever understood, and the thing I never bothered to explain to them. He wasn't just my pain specialist. He had been my father's colleague for 11 years before Dad retired from hospital administration. He had sat at our Thanksgiving table twice in the 90s, when I was still small enough to sit in a booster seat and my sister Carla was already practicing her cheerleader smile. He was, by any reasonable definition, a family friend. He had watched me grow up. He had also for the past 9 years watched me get sick. My name is Nora Callahan. I am 34 years old. I have complex regional pain syndrome, CRPS, a neurological condition that the National Institute of Health has classified as one of the most painful chronic conditions known to medicine. On their pain scale, it scores higher than childbirth. Higher than amputation of a digit. I mention this not for sympathy because I stopped needing sympathy from strangers around year 3, but because it matters for what happened at my father's party. It matters that the pain is real, documented, measured, and severe. It matters that I have 19 binders in a filing cabinet in my spare bedroom containing every scan, every blood panel, every specialist note, every prescription justification going back to the year I was 25 and a car accident on Route 9 changed every single calculation of my life. It matters because my family does not believe any of it. Or rather, my sister Carla doesn't believe it and my parents believe Carla. That's been the architecture of our family for as long as I can remember. Carla was the one who organized things, who spoke first, who decided the shape of a room before anyone else had time to read it. She was 2 years older than me and 4 inches taller and had inherited our mother's certainty about everything. When Carla decided something was true, it became true by sheer force of her conviction. She had decided somewhere around year 2 of my diagnosis that I was fabricating or exaggerating my illness, that the cane was theater, that the medications were addiction disguised as treatment, that the life I had built, smaller, quieter, more carefully managed than the one I'd planned, was a choice I was making to avoid adult responsibility and extract sympathy from people who deserved better than to be manipulated. She had never said this to Dr. Reed directly. He had never had to. I was always alone when she said it. I should tell you about my life because it's not the life my family imagined when they looked at me. I worked remotely as a medical billing compliance consultant, which sounds dry until you understand that hospitals and insurance networks paid me specifically to find the places where their documentation didn't match their billing codes, and that the corrections I found saved them on average between $400,000 and $2 million per audit cycle. I had 6 clients. I worked from a standing desk with a padded mat, a carefully positioned monitor, and a schedule built around my body's needs rather than anyone else's convenience. I took my medications at precisely the times Dr. Reed had calibrated over years of careful adjustment. I had a best friend named Deborah who brought me soup when I flared and argued with me about reality television with genuine passion. I had a cat named Ptolemy who slept on my heating pad and didn't judge anyone. I had a life. It was not a large life, but it was mine and it was real. What I did not have was the ability to stand at a cocktail party for 4 hours without consequence. What I did not have was the ability to explain that to Carla in a way she would accept. The Saturday of the party I spent 2 hours preparing. Not in the way people prepare for parties. Not music, not excitement, but the clinical preparation of someone who knows their body is going to be asked to perform beyond its preferences. I took my morning medications at 7 a.m. with food. I rested from 9 to 11. I dressed slowly, sitting on the edge of my bed, the navy wrap dress I'd bought for the occasion laid out beside me like a promise I was making to myself. I wore my medical alert bracelet. I brought my cane. I packed my evening bag carefully. My phone, my insurance card, my emergency contact card with Dr. Reed's number on it, and my 2 prescription bottles. The seizure prevention medication that I had been on for 6 years, and the controlled pain medication that Dr. Reed reviewed, adjusted, and documented at every single appointment. Dr. Reed and his wife Margaret picked me up at 6:15. Margaret had brought a cardigan for me because she knew hotel banquet rooms run cold. I had not asked her to. She had just known. "How are you feeling?" Dr. Reed asked as I settled into the back seat. "Nervous," I said. "But okay." "Good," he said. "Stay close to the door if you need to." "And Nora," he met my eyes in the rearview mirror. "I'm not just your ride tonight." I understood what he meant. I nodded and looked out the window at the darkening sky. The Hargrove Hotel's riverside room was everything my mother was good at. Warm lighting, white flowers, tables dressed in ivory linen, a small band playing quietly in the corner. 40-some guests milled around with champagne flutes. My father at the center of everything, silver-haired and laughing. Every inch the man who had managed a regional hospital system for 30 years and wanted everyone to know he'd earned this night. I made it to the table without incident. Dad hugged me genuinely warmly. The hug he still knew how to give when Carla wasn't shaping the room. "Nora Bear," he said quietly. "You look beautiful." "You look retired," I said, and he laughed. Margaret steered me to my seat. Dr. Reed went to greet my father, then moved to the bar, giving me space, staying visible. I knew exactly where he was at every moment. That awareness, knowing where my safety net was positioned, was something I had learned to maintain the way other people maintain awareness of exits in a building. Quietly, continuously, without making it visible. Carla arrived 20 minutes later with her husband Brett and their 2 teenagers, Macy and Connor. She was in red, which was a choice. She surveyed the room the way she always did, not looking for people to greet, but establishing the map of who was where and what she was walking into. Her eyes found me. She smiled. It was not a warm smile. "Nora," she said, bending to kiss my cheek. "You made it. I wasn't sure you'd be up for it." "I'm up for it," I said. "Good." Her eyes moved to my cane, propped against the chair beside me. "Maybe you won't need that tonight. It's a party." I didn't answer. Deborah had coached me. You don't have to defend yourself. You just have to survive the night. The first 2 hours were almost manageable. I ate carefully, food I knew wouldn't interact badly with my medications. I talked to my Aunt Rosemary, who was 81 and deeply interested in my opinion about a novel she'd just finished. I watched my father accept a plaque from his former colleagues and looked genuinely moved by it. I watched my mother circulate with practiced grace, a woman in her element, making everyone feel specifically seen. I loved her for that even when it cost me. I thought about how complicated love is, how you can love someone completely and also know that they have failed you in a particular, specific, undeniable way and hold both of those things without resolution. The pain was there the way it always is. Not spiking, just present, a constant negotiation between my nervous system and my will. I shifted my position every 20 minutes. I took my 8 p.m. dose at 8 p.m. discreetly with a sip of water the way I'd done thousands of times. Carla saw me do it. I watched her watch me. I watched the decision form on her face, the particular tightening around her eyes that I had learned to recognize as the moment she stopped considering and started acting. She leaned over to Mom. Mom's expression shifted. They both looked at me. Here we go. She waited until the speeches were done. My father had just finished thanking the room. A gracious, funny speech that got genuine laughs and a standing ovation. The applause was still fading. People were reaching for their desserts. The band was starting up again, soft and unhurried. It was the precise moment of maximum warmth and witnesses, which I would later understand was intentional. Carla didn't do things quietly when she could do them publicly. She stood up, walked around the table and reached directly into my evening bag. Not toward it. Her hand closed around both prescription bottles before I even registered what was happening. She pulled them out, held them up so the people nearby could see, and set them on the table in front of her like evidence. "This stops now," she said. Her voice was controlled, carrying the voice of someone who had rehearsed. You're not sick, Nora. You're addicted. And this family is done watching you destroy yourself with these things while calling it medicine. The table went quiet first. Then the quiet spread. Carla, I started. No. She put her hand up. I've done the research. I've talked to people. What you're on, this combination, this is what addicts use. This is not what sick people take. And we're done enabling it. Mom reached across and covered my hand with hers. The gesture looked like comfort but felt like restraint. We love you, sweetheart. We're doing this because we love you. Dad, at the head of the table, looked uncomfortable. He looked at Carla, then at me, then at his champagne glass. He said nothing. In our family, Dad's silences were always votes. Carla, I said, and I was proud of how steady my voice was. Give those back to me. No, she said. I'm not going to watch you. Give them back. Nora, you are making a scene at Dad's. I am asking you to give me my medication. I stood, which was a mistake. Too fast, the pain spiking up through my leg, my balance tilting, and I caught the edge of the table. My cane was still leaning against the chair. 3 feet away. Unreachable. My cousin David, sitting nearby, started to rise. Carla shot him a look that sat him back down. See, she said, turning to the table. This is the withdrawal. This is what the drugs do to her. She needs her medication returned. Immediately. The voice came from behind her. Dr. Reed had crossed the room so quietly that no one had tracked him. He stood now at the edge of our table. Not looming, not aggressive, but present in the way that people with genuine authority are present. Without effort, without performance, simply occupying the space and meaning it. He was 62 years old. He had been a board-certified pain specialist and neurologist for 31 years. He had published 47 peer-reviewed papers. He had testified as an expert witness in 11 court cases. He was, at this moment, wearing a dark dinner jacket, holding a glass of sparkling water, and looking at my sister with an expression I recognized from the few times I had seen him genuinely angry, perfectly calm. James, my mother said, her voice catching. I know what you're doing, Patricia. He set his glass on the table. Carla, my name is Dr. James Reed. I am a board-certified pain management specialist and neurologist. I have been Nora's physician for 9 years. I have reviewed, prescribed, and documented every medication in those bottles at every appointment. I know exactly what they are, what they do, and why she takes them. Carla's chin came up. With all due respect, Dr. Reed. What Nora takes, he continued as though she hadn't spoken, is a carefully calibrated combination of medications that manage her CRS, complex regional pain syndrome, which I can explain to you in clinical detail if that would help, and prevent the seizure activity that her condition can trigger. The medication you are holding. He looked at the bottles in her hand. The one in your left hand. She took her scheduled dose 40 minutes ago. Without the next dose in approximately, he glanced at his watch, 3.5 hours, she will be at significant risk of a tonic-clonic seizure. That is not an opinion. That is pharmacology. The table was absolutely still. So what you are holding, Dr. Reed said, is not evidence of addiction. It is a seizure prevention protocol. And what you did, reaching into her bag, removing her prescribed medication, holding it from her against her will, constitutes, under Pennsylvania state law, interference with medical treatment and assault on a person with a documented disability. He paused. I am telling you this clearly as someone who has known your family for 30 years, because I want you to understand what you've done before the next part. Carla's face had gone through several colors. She landed on something white and fixed. The next part. Brett, her husband, said from beside her. Dr. Reed reached into his jacket pocket and set his phone on the table, screen up. I called 911 approximately 90 seconds ago when I saw what was happening. Not to have anyone arrested, that will be Nora's decision, not mine. But because Nora is a patient whose medical safety was compromised in a public setting, and I have a duty of care that supersedes social discomfort. He looked at Carla. The bottles, please. The room, not just the table now, the whole room, was watching. Carla set the bottles on the table. Her hands, I noticed, were shaking. I picked them up. I put them back in my bag. I sat down carefully, reached for my cane and positioned it beside me. Thank you, I said to Dr. Reed. My voice was very quiet. He sat down. picked up his sparkling water. Said nothing further. For a long moment no one at the table moved. Then my cousin David stood, walked around to my side of the table and sat in the empty chair beside me. He didn't say anything either. He just sat there, present and solid, and that small act of choosing a side cracked something open in my chest that I hadn't known was sealed. The two uniformed officers arrived 11 minutes later. They were professional and quiet about it, speaking first to the hotel manager and then making their way to our table. Dr. Reed met them briefly and explained the situation in clinical terms. They asked me specifically whether I wished to make a formal complaint. I looked at my father. He was looking at his hands. I looked at Carla. She was looking at the tablecloth. Brett had his arm around her shoulders in a way that looked less like comfort and more like he was trying to keep her upright. I looked at my mother. She was crying, small silent tears that she was trying not to let anyone see. I had seen those tears before. They were real. That was the terrible thing. The love was real and the failure was real, and both things were true simultaneously, and I was going to have to carry that for the rest of my life. Not tonight, I told the officer. I'd like to think about it. He gave me a card. He gave Dr. Reed a card. They left quietly. The party did not recover. People began finding reasons to say goodbye, first in ones and twos, then in a steady stream. My father stood and shook hands and accepted hugs with the slightly dazed expression of a man watching his carefully constructed evening become something he would have to think about for a very long time. Dr. Reed and Margaret stayed until I was ready to leave. Margaret had kept her hand on my arm for most of the last hour, a steady, warm pressure that asked nothing of me. At 10:30 I said goodbye to my father. He hugged me tighter than before, longer. "I'm sorry," he said into my hair. "Nora, I know, Dad," I said. "I know." I did not say it was okay. Because it wasn't okay. It had not been okay for a long time, and I was done saying it was okay. But I also understood, standing there with my arms around my father on his retirement night, that he was 67 years old and had spent 4 decades deferring to the louder voices in the room, and that this was not a thing that would change completely, and that I was going to have to decide what kind of relationship I could have with someone who loved me and kept failing me, and that this decision was mine to make without anyone's input. I kissed his cheek. I walked out. In the car, I sat in the back seat with Margaret's cardigan over my shoulders and watched the city pass outside the window. The medications were in my bag. My body ached with the particular exhaustion of having been present in a room where I had to fight for my own reality. My leg throbbed. My hands were steadier than I expected. "You did very well tonight," Dr. Reed said from the front seat. "I didn't do anything," I said. "You stayed," he said. That was something. We drove in silence for a while. "What happens now?" I asked. Not about the legal question. I'd been asking myself that already, and I knew I was going to call the patient advocacy attorney that Deborah had found for me 6 months ago, the one whose number I had stored in my phone but hadn't used yet. I meant something bigger. What happens now with Carla? With my parents? With the specific shape of a family that has believed one version of me for so long that the truth feels, to them, like an attack? "I don't know," Dr. Reed said. And I appreciated that he didn't try to answer more than he knew. 3 days after the party I called the attorney. Her name was Sandra Okafor, and she had spent 16 years specializing in medical rights and disability law. I told her what had happened. I emailed her Dr. Reed's documentation, his incident notes from that evening, and the written statement he had prepared. 11 pages, single-spaced, covering 9 years of treatment, the specific medications, the clinical rationale, and a precise account of what he had witnessed at the Hargrove Hotel. Sandra reviewed everything and called me back in 48 hours. "You have a case," she said. "A clear one if you want to pursue it. Interference with medical treatment, disability-based assault. The doctor's documentation is extraordinary." Pause. "But I want to ask you something before we talk about strategy. What do you want out of this? Not legally, personally. What outcome would make your life better?" I thought about it for a long time before I answered. "I want it on record," I said finally. "Not necessarily in a courtroom. But I want Carla to understand, formally with Dr. Reed's name on it and a lawyer's name on it, what she did and what it could have done to me. I want my parents to read it in a document they can't dismiss. And I want it to stop." Sandra understood. She drafted a formal legal notice. Not a lawsuit, not yet, but the kind of letter that arrives in an envelope that makes people understand the conversation has changed registers. It went to Carla, to Brett, copied to my parents. It cited the relevant statutes. It attached Dr. Reed's statement. It outlined what a formal complaint would look like and what the consequences could be. It also contained, in Sandra's precise and unemotional language, a clinical description of what could have happened to me if I had gone into a seizure in that hotel ballroom without my medication, without immediate medical intervention, in a room full of people who had been told by my sister that my condition wasn't real. My mother called me the morning after it arrived. She was crying, not the small, contained tears from the party, but something larger and less controlled. "I didn't know," she kept saying. "Nora, I didn't," Carla said. "I know what Carla said," I told her. "I've heard it for 7 years. I should have, your father and we should have." "Yes," I said. "You should have." I let that sit. I didn't soften it. It was the first time in 7 years that I had let the truth sit without immediately reaching for a way to make it easier for them to hold. He cried for a while. I stayed on the phone. Not because I owed her comfort, but because she was my mother and I still loved her, and both of those things were going to have to coexist inside me for the rest of my life whether I wanted them to or not. Carla did not call. What she did 3 weeks later was have her own doctor send a letter to Sandra's office. A letter that attempted to reframe the incident as a concerned family intervention and cited several studies about prescription drug dependency. Sandra called me when it arrived, and I could hear in her voice that she was working to keep her professional tone intact. "She's digging in," Sandra said. "She always does," I said. "Do you want to escalate?" I thought about Carla. Not the Carla from the party, the one in red who had held my medication up like evidence, but the Carla from before, the one who had taught me to ride a bike on the driveway of our parents' house on a summer afternoon when I was 6 years old. She had run alongside me for 20 minutes, holding the seat, shouting, you've got it, keep going," and I had kept going. I had thought she was still holding the seat for a full minute after she'd let go. I didn't know exactly when she had stopped believing in me. I didn't know if there was a specific moment, a specific grievance, a specific version of the story she told herself about who I was and why. I only knew that she had stopped, and that the letting go had been the opposite of that summer afternoon, not freeing me to go forward, but refusing to believe I was moving at all. "Not yet," I told Sandra. "But keep everything ready." The formal consequences of that night unfolded slowly, the way most real consequences do. Carla and Brett attended 3 sessions with a family mediator, not voluntarily, but as a condition of the letter's resolution clause that Sandra had written with enough legal weight that they understood the alternative. The mediator, a woman named Dr. Priya Nambiar, later told me that those sessions were some of the most difficult she had facilitated. That Carla had genuine beliefs about what she'd done. That dismantling genuine beliefs is harder than dismantling lies. My father, 6 weeks after the party, drove to my apartment alone, without my mother, without anyone, and sat at my kitchen table and asked me to explain my diagnosis to him. Not to defend it. Not to justify it. Just to explain it. He sat there for 2 hours while I walked him through the 19 binders. He asked questions. He took notes on a yellow legal pad, the same kind he'd used in hospital meetings for 30 years. When I showed him the pain scale scores and he saw where Cerbis landed, he set his pen down and looked at the table for a long moment. "I failed you," he said. "Yes," I said. "I'm sorry." "I know." He came back 2 weeks later. And 2 weeks after that. It was not a resolution. It was not a healing. It was the beginning of something that might, in time, become a real relationship. Or might not, and I was trying to hold both possibilities without flinching from either one. Deborah threw me a small, fierce celebration at her apartment 3 months after the party. Just the 2 of us and Ptolemy, who attended by sleeping on the couch and ignoring us. She made the soup I liked and opened a bottle of wine I mostly didn't drink and said, "You survived a thing." "I survive a lot of things," I said. "This one was different," she said. "You didn't apologize your way out of it." He was right. And I was still figuring out what it meant that she was right. What kind of person I was becoming now that I had stopped apologizing for the fact of my body, for the reality of my life, for the existence of my illness in a world that found invisible conditions inconvenient and easy to doubt. I still take my medications at the precise times Dr. Reed has calibrated. I still work from my standing desk with the padded mat. Ptolemy still sleeps on the heating pad. I still talk to Deborah about reality television with genuine and unironic passion. What's different is smaller and larger than I expected. I no longer apologize when I need to sit down. I no longer shorten my sentences to make my explanations feel less burdensome to people who haven't earned the full version. I no longer perform wellness I don't feel in rooms where pretending costs me more than honesty would. And when I carry my cane through a party, through a restaurant, through a family event, I carry it the way it was always meant to be carried. Not as something to hide. Not as something to explain. Just as what it is. A tool that belongs to me, that helps me move through the world, that is no one's business but mine and my doctor's. The legal notice sits in Sandra's files, ready. The 19 binders sit in my cabinet, organized. Dr. Reed sees me every 8 weeks. At my last appointment before I left, he said, "You handled it well. All of it. You gave me the 4-minute warning," I said. "I had time to prepare." He smiled. "You always had time. You just needed someone in the room who knew the truth." I thought about that on the drive home. I thought about how much of surviving chronic illness is finding the people who will be in the room when the room turns against you, not to fight your battles, but to stand beside you and say, "I know what I know. I have the records. I was here." I thought about how you can love a family and also know clearly and without apology that they failed you. I thought about my father's yellow legal pad and the notes he was still taking, still trying to understand. I thought about Carla, who had not called. I thought about the 4-minute window, how small it was. How fast things could change. How much had been decided in those few minutes in a hotel ballroom while the band played something soft and nobody moved. I didn't have clean answers. I don't think I'm supposed to. What I have is the truth of my own body, documented and defended. What I have is the knowledge that I stayed in the room and didn't fold. What I have is a cat asleep on a heating pad and a friend who makes soup and a doctor who picks up the phone. For now, that is enough. And for now, I am learning, slowly, imperfectly, with considerable pain, that enough is something I get to define for myself. If this story reached something in you, if you've ever had to fight for someone to believe what your body is telling you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're still in the middle of your own 4-minute window, hold on. Someone in the room knows the truth.